So welcome everyone. My name is Abimbola and I am one of the interns for Interfaith Week 2025. So Interfaith Week 2025 is an annual initiative held in November that aims to strengthen interfaith relations across the UK. Interfaith Week is a special week focusing on deepening understanding, building relationships, and highlighting the positive impact of faith and belief communities across the country. As part of Interfaith Week this year, for the first time, myself and other interfaith interns will be hosting a podcast series. The Interfaith Week 2025 podcast celebrates interfaith voices around the UK and explores the theme of community together we serve. Each episode will feature a guest discussing the role of interfaith dialogue, service, community, and building this across the country. So for today's episode, I am delighted to welcome Manjit Kaur. Manjit is a member of NASACA, the National Association of Standing Councils on Religious Education. She is also currently serving chair of Coventry Sacre and co-chair of Warwickshire Sacre. She is also involved with Coventry Multi-Faith Forum. So welcome, Manjit. It's so lovely to have you with us today. And could you start by telling us a little bit about yourself and the organisations and networks that you're part of?
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Interfaith Week, and particularly our theme, Community Together We Serve, something that's very dear to my heart as chair of both Coventry and Warwickshire Sacres and my interaction with Coventry Multi-Faith Forum. But not just those, other partnerships such as the Lady Godiva Trusts, Coventry Lord Mayor's Peace Committee, and various other partnerships that have flourished as a result of my long-term work with the Interfaith Network. I have a fundamental belief in building bridges, so I look for partnerships, learning from each other, and most importantly, because I come from an educational background, is actually preparing our young people to thrive in our very diverse global village. And every role I have played, I'm hoping, leaves a legacy of unity and understanding for our young people and for them to thrive as they grow up and become young adults in the world today, facing the challenges that they face in a way that I didn't, with modern technology. The impact of everything is very close to you, it's very near, it's very now. But to remember the principles behind, connecting, learning, collaborating, cooperating, those things stand the test of time. I think we probably call them the soft skills. But that's sort of my background, both professionally, personally, and my value statement.
Thank you for sharing that, Manjit. That's lovely to hear. So we'll go straight into the first question, which is, what does interfaith mean to you, and why do you think it's important to understand different faiths and beliefs?
I can probably put that into in a very short sentence quite deliberately, because the key points for me, interfaith actually reminds us that we are about building bridges, and you'll hear me using that phrase quite a lot. Building bridges through learning from each other, and not just learning from each other for our own generation, but ensuring our youngsters understand the concept of building bridges. They're surrounded by lots of information, and sometimes that information is not always positive in the way that it should be. In reality, there's a lovely Punjabi expression, that you can't clap with one hand. We all need each other. And I have personally experienced the two hands working together throughout my life. And if I use a personal example from when I was little, my parents came to England, my father from Argentina, my mum from India. They got married, had children. I went to school down the road, literally. I lived on George Street, and in George Street, every single household was a member of either a minority group or a faith group. None of us spoke the same language, but we became each other's extended family. We all started school at the same time, and our first experience was school dinners. Now, I come from a Punjabi Sikh background. We eat with our hands. Got to school at lunchtime and these metal things were there and I didn't know what to do with them. Obviously, you go home and you talk to your mum and dad. As I said, my dad came from Argentina. His friends were Portuguese, Spanish Catholics. And there was a church across the road, literally straight from our house. And he talked to the neighbours and friends and said, well, Padres are good people. Let's go and talk to them. The Shortleys, the Packwoods, and the Osbornes are the three families that have played quite an important part in my life in terms of the example they set. They came to our Punjabi class on a Saturday and basically taught us about English customs. So I learnt how to use a knife and a fork. I did learn to make English tea and drink it. For them, it was their first experience of vegetarian food. So we learnt about cucumber sandwiches and not having crusts around the bread. And together, the church and the Gurdwara initially, with members of both communities, used to go out and do things. So we went to the seaside, went to Skegness every year. We took broughty and cucumber sandwiches, jar and English tea. And that was the relationship that was built over a number of years. Now, shortly after the Sikh community came, our Islamic community joined, and the community were building a masjid down the road from our house, ran out of money. And the Pradhan, our president, went over with the committee and all of us to say, look, it's embarrassing. You have nowhere to read the namaz. Here's the money. And we used to go every weekend to help build the masjid. In Punjabi, we call it Epsiva, brick service. So I'd be passing bricks to whoever was next to me until this masjid was built. Now, this was a gentleman's agreement. The money was paid back, but the long-term impact of it was that you had faith groups starting to work together. So you now had the church, the masjid, the gurdwara. Shortly afterwards, our Hindu community joined us, and the same thing was repeated. I don't know how the next bit happened, because don't forget, I wasn't 10 at the time, sort of between 5 and 8. We managed to connect up with our cathedral. And our cathedral through Canon Peter Berry, who spoke the most beautiful Punjabi you have ever heard. He used to come to the Gurdwara and talk to us. It sort of ended up, mainly our men in terms of the frontline work, talking to each other about the difficulties their children were having in school, in society, how to go to the bank. And somehow, considering none of them spoke the same language, I don't know how they communicated, but they managed to communicate that friendship, that bond, that helping of each other. Now, you think, first 10 years of my life were like that. And I've taken that with me throughout my life to the next 6 decades. So that's sort of a personal one, from a child in a school to a whole community coming together. And those relationships between our elders have stayed. We're now sharing them with our youngsters because we haven't. So we're hoping that Dinesh, who's doing a PhD and collecting our stories and our narratives, is putting it together. He finishes it next year and hopefully it will be available then to share with the wider community, but more specifically, our youngsters. Professionally, well, I became a teacher. I'm a Sikh, a lifelong learner. The concept of service is important. So teaching is a marvelous way to do it. I've taught diverse communities. But because of language barriers, I've learned to use first language and English and connect the two up and actually teach as a result. Now, my probationary children, i.e. my first year children, are now in their 40s. And I'm so proud of them, of what they've achieved, but they've got a good balance between speaking and understanding England, Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales, and this country, Europe, and the culture from which their family are extracted, and balance the two. Now, that's quite a challenge. It's quite interesting to see a fair few of them now managing our local places of worship. So whenever an issue appears, we've got a group to talk and we've got things in common because we've helped each other. So that's my personal and professional. As I said, connection, learning, listening, collaborating. Single words, but you put them together, you get amazing young people who show you what they can do. I'll pause now.
Thank you for sharing that. That was lovely. It's so kind that you guys kind of all bonded so easily and over food as well. I think food is such a good thing to bond people over. So that's lovely
It
to hear.
certainly is.
Manjit? kind of naturally flowed into community, which is what our next question is about. So, this year's theme for Interfaith Week is Community Together We Serve. What role does social action play in bringing people together from different faith and belief backgrounds?
Okay, very interesting. Okay, as you said, this year's Interfaith Week theme is Community Together We Serve. And it really speaks to the heart of what interfaith work is all about. For me, service across the faith means coming together, not just to talk, but to act, to meet the real needs, uplift others, and to build stronger and more compassionate communities. I've seen this through organisations like Langar, which extends the Sikh tradition of langar, the free food for all, into the wider community. And quite interestingly, their volunteers are from all backgrounds. They serve hot meals to those experiencing homelessness or hardship. It's a beautiful example of selfless service or Siva in action, very, very similar to the Salvation Army. I'm finding that most of the youngsters are using it for their Duke of Edinburgh Award for their volunteer service. Now, not only is it the Sikh community, what seems to have happened naturally is the connection between the other faith groups. Langar Aid works very closely with North Point Church in Coventry. So you've already got two groups integrating together. One provides cold food, the other provides hot food. But the two working together every Sunday under the flyover in the city centre is quite an interesting scene in terms of helping those in difficulty, particularly families with young children. Alongside that, Islamic Relief, the three of them. And the example they're setting our youngsters is that faith groups have many values in common, and looking after the needy is one of them. Now, this has got nothing to do with politics or anything else. It's just that all our citizens in our city and our Shire county deserve the best possible thing that we can offer them. And it says in all our sacred texts that actually helping someone in need is actually worth greater value than earning millions and millions of pounds. And that's quite an important lesson. As I said, I've seen faith groups look at food banks. And as you were saying earlier, food is a really leveler in terms of actually bringing people together. If you were looking at it in school, it's a bit like colouring in. When your hands are busy, your mind is free to think and think about the higher things. And that's when you start to connect up. I'm going to go away a little bit from faith to non-faith. If you think about Maslow and his hierarchy of needs, very difficult to think about self-actualization and the higher needs that you have if your belly is empty. And all our faith groups have said the same thing, but thousands of years ago or hundreds of years ago. We're merely bringing it into context here. I was really pleased that this spirit was actually captured when Princess Anne came to visit Godra Sahib in Leamington Spa. And she came to talk about Community Together We Serve and actually met the volunteers from various faith groups and was quite interested in how she saw Christians, Muslims, Jews, Buddhists, Baha'i, Rastafarians working together. And then when she went along to St. Mary's Church to see the food being distributed, was fascinated between the connection between the two places of worship and asked, how did the connection come about? And their volunteers talked about, well, the Gurdwara's got kitchen facilities to cook, but it needed better distribution facilities. So asked the church down the road. And the two came together and have been together for quite a number of years. And I think that level of visibility from somebody that high profile actually has given Interfaith Week a really good jump start. So as we're talking to schools at the moment and encouraging them to look at the resources provided by the Faith and Belief Forum and other interfaith partners, we've actually got a good starting point. We're very fortunate this year, not only has Princess Anne joined us, we've managed to talk to BBC CWR and Children in Need because that's happening at the same time. Our schools are joining in the three-legged race, and at each point in Coventry and Warwickshire where they pause, there'll be examples of service from young people, from the youth workers to their teachers, to general people in the public, And how these people are paid, they're volunteers, they're quiet people. To borrow a comment made by one of our young women last year's International Women's Day, is they're ordinary people who've done very extraordinary things. But if you're walking past them down the street, you wouldn't know that. And that's the beauty of it, because there's no ego involved. It's we live in this city, we live in this county. Our youngsters, our families have needs. We will provide it, whether we do it through food or
Yeah.
helping people build things with our hands. It's the action,
Mhm.
and it's sort of
Yeah.
filtering through to Duke of Edinburgh Award. As I said, the charities with children in need. And we're learning how to publicize the action so we get maximum impact. But we're trying to balance it, because CVAT is a very private thing. You do it because it's the right thing to do, not because you want credit for it. And we're developing resilience in our young people, but also helping them to understand that if you're doing well, but your neighbour isn't, then you're equally responsible for that as they are. And that's quite a difficult concept when you're very young to learn. But the younger you learn it, the better. But if I go back to my personal story, when we were little, we used to go to various houses to make smoothie for weddings.
Mm.
And I've no idea who the families were. I'd just come home from school and my mum would say, and we'd be sitting in a line and we'd all have a job. But you did
Yeah.
it. Now, when you've experienced that, that's what you want youngsters to experience. So some of the things that we've modernised, such as Lunga, is actually mimicking that. And by
Yes.
mimicking it, we're giving our children the experience, and they're making friends.
Yeah, that's really important.
Yeah, and that's the bit, is the connection. So we had 3 of our senior schools make soup. One did it for RE, the other one did it for design and technology, and the third one did it for citizenship. It was our Sikh school, our Muslim ethos school, and our Church of England school. But they worked together over a year, made friends, and although they finished the project and moved on, they're still friends. And they've
Yeah,
now joined us as young adults.
that's lovely.
And that's the legacy we're looking for. And I'm really quite excited about Interfaith Week. For us in Coventry, we're also talking to our events team, because we have a peace festival in November. And our Interfaith Week is actually 2 weeks, not 1 week.
Mhm.
And what we've done is looked at the 85th anniversary of the Coventry Blitz, and looked at the Blitz spirit and linked it to Community Together We Serve. So we're putting the 2 things together with the resources. So we will have lots of things going on, from writing peace poetry. We've brought schools together, found ourselves a poet laureate and somebody from the Royal Shakespeare Company to write poetry around it, so that we've got some sort of document that's there for the next generation. We're actually now thinking, what are we leaving behind?
No.
And it can't just be oral.
Yes. No, thank you, Manjit. That was really, really insightful. I think it's so important to work with the younger community in order for this to continue. So we're just coming to the end of the podcast now, and we have one final question. If you could share one message with our listeners about Interfaith Week, what would it be?
Well, I was thinking about the future of faith relations in the United Kingdom, and I hope we carry on moving from dialogue, from talk to action, and I hope we see more collaboration on social issues, more youth involvement, and more storytelling that reflects the diversity and richness of our communities, because they are pretty amazing. It's a shame they don't make the news in quite the same way. I hope interfaith becomes something that people feel a part of, and not something they feel they need permission to join and do, because it's at the heart of everything, really. It's interfaith is about connection, and the more we connect, the stronger we are, and the more compassionate our society becomes, because what you do impacts on everybody else and the other way around. That's me in a nutshell.
Yeah, it's all a cycle, and we have to give where we can and help others. And
Indeed.
I think kindness will always find its way back to you, won't it?
Indeed.
So,
it's a very Buddhist comment, isn't it?
yeah.
What goes around comes around, and it
Yeah,
does.
exactly. I think we may have time for a quick extra question as well. So, bursting bubble report shows that only a small percentage of people are involved in interfaith. How do we reach out to people beyond existing enthusiasts and get more people excited about interfaith?
Yeah, well, that's quite an interesting report that only a small percentage are involved. I think I'd have to disagree.
Yeah.
I think a lot are involved. We just don't know about it. And that's the part I'm finding now, is there are so many things going on that they're not recorded, they're all oral. And for me, that's quite a dilemma, because seva, whether you zakat or charity, it is a very personal thing. And it sort of sometimes concerns me that it can come over that in not a positive way. It should come over because we're committed to ensuring that everybody, is on a level playing field in terms of what we can provide. So whilst I argue that point with you, I think we've got to make interface much more accessible, much more relatable, much more rooted in everyday life. It's sort of modernizing it. If I go back to Langar Aid and Khalsa Aid, Islamic Relief, and Seva Days in members of the Hindus community, it's actually having something that you can do with your hands. And that's something maybe we have lost because we've become a technological society. A lot to be said for it. And actually bringing those again. I still think things like the youth service is an important element. Going to youth clubs with your neighbourhood and actually playing games, sports. They're all ways of connecting people up and bringing them together where you do something as a group rather than as an individual. There are things that you need to do as an individual. My maths isn't going to improve if I don't practice my number bonds. But it's what we call the soft skills. How I work with you, how I work with Sophie, how we work together is actually what makes a difference collectively. And bearing in mind now, our young people, when they apply for jobs, they're not going to be competing with Fred Bloggs living next door. It could be Fred Singh in India, Fred in Colombia, Fred in Pakistan, in any of the African countries. And if you've never interacted with a wider, diverse community, you don't know how to ask questions, you don't know how to agree and disagree, and nothing wrong with either of them. Looking at other people's perspectives, that's the joy of learning. You suddenly know things that you didn't know before. Oh, wow, okay. So knowledge is good, but then how you apply it.
Exactly.
So we do need to meet people where they are.
Exactly.
Not where you think they should be, and actually move from that. That includes sometimes your starting point may not be as positive as you'd like, but you can move it.
Exactly.
And that's the bit when people meet people and they help each other. And I saw it during COVID particularly, and particularly with the elderly, where both our all our communities actually got together. We had the hospitals, the maternity units say we're not getting any baby clothes for our premature babies because everybody's making PPE, and we were in Coventry and Warwickshire. So as faith groups, we actually knitted baby clothes. It did get a bit competitive, I had to have to say, because it was who made the best patterns, etc., etc. But we did it collectively. And it's those sorts of things. And many of our youngsters actually said we'd quite like to learn how to knit. So you then had generations connecting with generations.
Yeah.
And it literally
goes with what you were saying, doing something with your hands. Yeah.
And something small actually has a big impact. It doesn't have to be something big. Big things tend to get lost in the melee, but something small leads to something big.
Yeah.
And through all those activities, we've made friends. And that's the bit. So if there is an issue, we deal with it very quickly. We talk to each other.
That's it. It's just about having a conversation.
Misunderstood rather than, ooh. And actually, we understand each other's hurt.
Yes.
And that's the other thing. I'm thinking of the farmers' protest in India. I'm not I come from a long line of farmers. I kill everything I grow, which is not a good thing from somebody. But I was able to talk to farmers in Warwick and explain what the issue was. They understood it better than I did and actually explained it back to me. But you then start thinking, actually, we've got to take more responsibility, not just for local issues, but for global issues, because they're now affecting everybody.
We're all
I'm not
just so
sure that answers
interconnected these
your
days.
question, but
No, I think that
bursting of the
was,
bubble, but interfaith has a
yeah,
major role to play because it brings different
it
perspectives
does.
to the
It
table.
does. No, that was really insightful, and I enjoyed your answer. I think it's true. So much of it isn't recorded. And like you said, with charity, because we're taught to give it discreetly, we don't know it could help our neighbor, or it could help even someone at our workplace. But yeah, so there's probably a lot more interfaith behind the scenes that we're not aware of. So thank you so much, Manjit. I think that's all we have time for today. We really enjoyed it. And if you could just highlight one key message from this conversation.
Don't be afraid, have a go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Once
Definitely.
you open that one door, several other doors will open.
Yes.
I have made and met some amazing people in my life's journey from every faith group, every community, and benefited. And I hope they've benefited from interaction with me.
Sure.
All I need to do now is pick up the phone and ask for help, and it's there.
Exactly. It's building those relationships in your community, isn't it? No, thank you so much. And thank you to everyone who has tuned into this episode to listen. There is still time to get involved in Interfaith Week if you'd like to. You can find out what's happening in your local area on the Interfaith Week website or on our social media. We'll include links in the description. If you want to get in touch with myself or any of the Interfaith team, our details will be in the description below. If you're Coventry based, then you can even reach out to Manjit for more.
Indeed.
So,
or Warwickshire based. We're here.
Exactly. So yeah, thank you everyone for listening, and yeah, we really appreciate it, and enjoy. Bye bye.